heard the flamenco form Furuca before. You've probably heard it in the key of A minor or sometimes E minor. In this video though, I want to take that form, look at some of the technique and theory elements there, and transpose it to the key of D minor so we can work on the music theory side of our brain and also get a deeper understanding of what Furuca really is. I've got a whole tutorial on Furuca, so check that out if you want to get more into it. But briefly, let's just look at how you normally would hear Furuca. We have an E7 chord, going to an A minor chord, and it happens again. We're in 4/4 time. And it goes to D minor, back to A minor, and then it goes to E7. There's usually a melodic phrase here that concludes everything, and then we're back to A minor. So like I said, this is in 4/4 time, and that's what makes it, I think, a lot more approachable for just when you're getting into flamenco, because there's so many weird things happening technique-wise and rhythmically. You may have heard of many forms where we have to count to 12. Well, this is pretty digestible because we're just counting to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can do more downstrokes than upstrokes if you want, just to give it a little more aggressiveness. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So that's the basic chord progression and the count, but there's other little things that really make it sound like Furuca, and that's these little melodic things. Listen to this. There's a little melody inside of the chord there, and on the A minor chord. So when you hear that, you're probably listening to a Furuca. But what happened there, like they were in the key of A minor where all the C's are natural, right? In fact, the C note is in an A minor chord, but it starts like this. That little melody was B, C sharp, D. So that's coming from the parallel major key. So that's another interesting thing that's happening with a traditional Furuca. This is an example of modal interchange. This is the 5 chord from the major key. So you might be expecting an A major chord right there. And in fact, there are other forms that do just that. So we get this melody here. Now, what is an F note doing on top of an A minor chord? That's a minor 6th interval. F is on top of A minor. You could argue that this is an inversion of an F major 7th chord, but nobody's ever thinking that way. It's just that that's an A minor, and we're putting this note from the key F on top of it, and then we always take it off. It never really stays on that note. So we're going to figure out how we can do these things in the key of D minor in a second. Back to the 5 chord. Perfect place to do a Russ scale right there. Now, one thing we can do before we go to the 4 chord, very, very common and very cool and a good music theory concept. A7 takes us to D minor. That's a secondary dominant. So if we were in the key of D minor, which we're about to be, A7 would be the 5 chord. So we could say that this is the 5 of the 4. That's what a secondary dominant is. It's not the primary dominant, E7 was, but secondary meaning anything other than the real 5. So we have A minor turning into A7 because it takes us to D minor. You've heard that idea your whole life. Now here we do another embellishment. It's basically just, we only have one finger free. There's really no other note we could have done. So these are little embellishments, melodic embellishments. They sound great. And sometimes you can tell that the reason why they are played is not necessarily because they sound good or for anything other than convenience of we only had one finger, so where can that finger go? It can really only go here. We can't go to other notes because they're not in the key. You know, we could try something with a modal interchange idea, but it's not going to work here, right? And that note, G by the way, is a 4th, a perfect 4th over that chord. So for a moment this becomes a D sus 4 chord. We're back to A minor. Now here you might hear a phrase something like this. I mean, anything that you want to do, but that is the harmonic minor scale, and that's another typical thing of Furuca, having that concluding phrase, which is kind of a neat little wrap up at the end. You can really tell that things are done at that point. So now let's travel to the key of D minor and figure out what these chords would be and how we can make it sound like Furuca. So if we're in the key of D minor is the 1 chord. Let's count to 5 from D. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's A. So A7 is our 5 chord. And then if we counted to 4, it's really just 1 back from the 5. We would have G minor. So that's our 4 chord. Now we have a problem though. that G minor chord, we have to do a bar. Now, we could play G minor like this, but you don't see many people playing it that way. Kind of hard to get to. I have to really bend my wrist out like that. And that's why you so often hear Furuuka in the key of A minor or E minor, and so many guitar songs are written or played in those keys, because we can play that really important chord progression, the 1-4-5, without having to play any bar chords. So the Furuuka chord progression in D minor is going to be A7 to D minor, A7. But that happens twice, right? Now we're going to go to G minor. That's our 4 chord. Then back to D minor. That's a little bit tricky. Then we got our A7, and we're going to do some kind of phrase here, right? And then we end on D minor. At the beginning of this video, I played D minor at the end. If you want to finish it, that's such a go-to way to play a D minor chord with a half bar on the 10th fret. Okay, before we talk about where to do raw scales, let's put those embellishment notes in. So back to A minor, we had... Now all we did is take this chord, a dominant 7th chord, and move it towards the floor. So if I have A7, towards the floor, instead of the B string, is the E string. So I'm going to literally play the same frets. Open, 2nd fret, 3rd fret. That's E, F sharp, G. Those are all the same notes relative to the chord that the E7 had in the key of A minor. You play some aggressive downstrokes. I'm doing some golpes as well. That's going to resolve us to D minor. Now, how do we get a minor 6th from here? One way, by the way, that we could do this whole thing is just take that picture of Furuuka in A minor and just do bar chords up here. Watch this. There's the exact same thing that we did, except how are we going to get that minor 6th note? We don't even need to know what the name of the note is. We're just reproducing a picture up here, right? But that is a B flat note. Can't do it up there. It's just too weird. Plus, we're trying not to bar. We're not going to be able to avoid the G minor bar though. But so a B flat here, we can take our pinky and put it right here, and there's that minor 6. So now we're getting the sound that we know Furuuka needs to have. There it is. My ring finger can stay, slide it down. Back to A7, D minor. Remember how the 1 chord can become a dominant 7th on the way to the 4? That's the 5 of the 4. So very briefly here, we can turn this into a D7 chord. And if you don't like the way that sounds, or it's too difficult to do, just don't do it. These are just options to make things sound, you know, cool, but you don't have to do them. Now we're going to travel here to G minor. See how I'm playing G minor? Actually easier to get to, because I was just shaped like this. Kind of looks similar to me. But the reason I'm doing this is to keep my pinky free. Now, I could play a 4th just like the 4 chord does, if you remember from the D minor chord in the key of A minor, the 4 chord, and that would be a C note right here. At the beginning of this video, though, I played an E like this. Gives you a little jazzy sound. I just like that better. But you can play anything that you want as long as it's in the key here, the key of D minor. Then we're back to D minor. And then here we'll play A7, and we're going to have our melodic phrase here. What I did was something like this. That's a phrase, traditional little closing phrase. You literally can do that in the key of A minor. That's what that would sound like. So I'm on B flat, double pull off, B flat, pull off to A, pull off to open G. Then go to the next string, and we're playing F to E, except I'm articulating those notes with thumb rest strokes. And then C sharp. That's how we know it's the harmonic minor scale. It's also in the A7 chord though. And then I slide it up here. And this is a cool kind of characteristic flamenco thing that happens quite a bit, especially at the end of phrases, where I play this D note, but I play the open string again, so we get like double Ds right there. Gives it an interesting kind of drone sound. So that phrase can be... You can do anything that you want in that amount of time, and that's what's kind of cool about flamenco in general. You can just kind of make it a little bit different every time that you do it. And that really goes a long way towards getting better at improvising and just being able to alter things the way you feel at that moment. Okay, if we're in the key of D minor, why don't we drop this guy down and play in drop D? And that gives us really nice deep sound. Now a wimpy, let's say, 4-string, 4-note chord, D minor, becomes a really deep, full-sounding 6-note chord. 6 strings, right? We're using all the strings. Let's try the same thing now. right here, of course I can do D7. What does G minor look like here? Well, we can actually make things a little bit easier than having to bar. I can play G here, because when we tune down, instead of G being where we normally would want it, we have to compensate up 2 frets. So whatever you would do on that string, you got to think 2 frets higher. And I'm going to do a little bar here, play the D string, that's in a G minor chord. I'm just going to block the A string by getting a little bit lazy on this finger, and then strum across all strings. So there's G minor. And back to D minor. A common place to play rasgueos in Furuca kind of has to do with those melodies. They kind of go along with them. So on the first chord, 1, 2, 3, we might not do it, but here very often we'll go 1, 2. So it kind of went along somehow with that melody. It goes 1, 2, and then when I put this finger down, you can do a 4-stroke right there. That's pinky, ring, middle, index, and then take it off for the 4th and final beat. So if we're counting that, we could say 1 and 2, triplet 3 and 4 and. If we wanted to go nuts and do it every measure, we could do it on the 2nd beat, because the 3rd beat's kind of stronger, so we don't want to walk over that section. We want to kind of blend our rasgueo into that accented thing. So let's do quintuplet, a 5-stroke rasgueo. That's pinky, ring, middle, index, and then up, all in the space of 1 beat. Easier said than done. We're going 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to try to do that on the 2nd beat of every measure. You may have noticed on the G minor chord there, instead of doing a half bar and putting my ring finger here, blocking the A string, I did a full bar and put these 2 down. That's actually a G minor 7th chord. A little bit jazzier, but it's not hurting anybody. And then we had that note. We still can get that E note there, which is a major 6th. And then we're back to D minor. Now, one reason why I like to do this, it's a really good exercise. I haven't gotten any better at it, but it's really hard to get this B flat in here and not let the other strings buzz. I find that to be really tricky and a good exercise. Another type of embellishment or kind of variation that you'll see in Furuca is arpeggio. So let's go way, way, way up here and play an A7 chord this way. We could say this is coming from the C form of A major. And we're adding a G note in there. So this shape, this should be familiar to you, hopefully at some point. That is an inversion of a dominant 7th chord. And we have A in the bass, so it's no longer really an inversion because the root is the low note. We'll do that for A7. And then for D minor, we'll do this guy I was talking about, but we'll add this note. Just for the sake of the technique, my guitar is untunable up here, so try to listen past that. You could play the open D string though if you don't like that, because it's the same note, right? And then on G minor, we're just going to bar everything, or at least 5 strings, and play this guy, and go through the whole progression. If you like stuff like this, check out my membership where I have all kinds of tutorials, all my tabs, all kinds of stuff, community, monthly meetups, and we just go nuts on nylon string guitar. And definitely check out this video where I talk about Furuca a little more in depth.